I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road2College and the Paying for College 101 group. We're going to talk today about merit scholarships, how you can find them, what they are, what type of data you should be looking for. And this is actually technically a meeting. It's not a webinar. And I only like to emphasize that because if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I'm fine with that. We like it when people feel they can ask questions. It just makes it easier. And this is recorded, and we will send out the recording usually tomorrow or Monday at the latest. Okay, so I like to start here just to emphasize again that we're going to talk about merit scholarships, but why are merit scholarships important? There are really, when you're trying to figure out how to pay for college, three big buckets that we all are dealing with. One is what money you might have already been able to save, what's coming from your family. So it's your family contribution, whether it's savings that you were able to start when you was younger, or maybe you've just recently been able to start. That's one source. Another is sometimes families can figure out that they can cash flow and contribute more to tuition payments because they have less expenses at home. And the third is possibly you have some family members that can also help contribute, like a grandparent. So that's really money that the family is putting in towards paying college. The second big bucket is free money, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And then the third is when you have your family contribution and then you can get whatever free money you can. What's left is this gap, and usually the way most people can finance that gap is through borrowed money and loans. There's loans from the governments, which, in all honesty, are kind of changing or potentially might change. We have some ideas of how that might change, but we're not going to know for sure, probably for a few months. And then there's private loans. So even more important than ever, it's important to really focus on how you can cover your gap with as much free money as possible. And free money comes in the form of financial aid, which is really geared towards need-based financial aid. It's families that show that they have some sort of financial need, and we'll talk about how that's determined. And then there's merit scholarships, and that's money that colleges are offering to students that it's not based on what their family's financial need is. It's really based on how well academically the student has done, whether it's through their GPA, through test scores, or it could be some other accomplishment, like theater or arts. But this does not include athletic scholarships. We do not deal with athletic scholarships. That's a whole different set of rules. This is just focused on what they call institutional scholarships or institutional money that the college decides to give to families, either because you have a financial need or because you have some sort of merit that they want to attract to the college. Then the other two forms are government grants, which really Pell Grants, that's what falls into that category. And the last is private scholarships. And not that I guess I would say I'm neutral on private scholarships, meaning that yes, there are private scholarships out there. I wouldn't put all my energy there first. I think the most important place to put your energy and looking towards free money is the college that your student will ultimately attend, because that college will either provide you for need-based aid or they will provide merit scholarships. And that's going to be the largest source of free money your student can find. Private scholarships usually tend to be on the much smaller scale. Maybe they're $500 to $2,000. They are not generally renewable. So whatever work your student has to do to get a private scholarship for the first year, they have to continue to look for more private scholarships in subsequent years. So again, I think students should look for private scholarships, but the bulk of the energy should be looking towards the best college that's going to provide the most money. And then once that is settled, then students can start looking for private scholarships to add on top of it. And to me, that's kind of like the, icing on top of the cake. It's nice to have, but that's not going to provide the bulk of your solution of if you're trying to reduce the cost of college. So kind of going along with everything I just said, the reason why we focus so much on the college list and the research that should go into what colleges your students should apply to is that the end result of the college list are the acceptances that your student receives. And the acceptances are ultimately going to drive your family's final cost of college. So the college list is going to determine how much work or how many applications your student's going to have to fill out. And it's going to determine where your students get accepted, and it's going to ultimately determine what the total final cost is. So researching and building the college list and the schools that your student applies to is, to me, the most important and pivotal point in the process, and really needs to have a lot of thought and be done strategically. So somebody's asking, for free money, do the political changes impact the free money at all? Where do college budgets get the financial aid and merit from? Are those pots of money safe? It's a very good question. So think of colleges as businesses, which they definitely are on some level. And colleges are setting aside a certain amount of money that they choose to give to students. Again, either they're going to give it to students based on the family's financial need or on that student's academic accomplishment. So I can't tell you yet whether the political impacts are going to impact colleges. There's nothing out that I've seen so far where the government is actually, telling the colleges how much money they can and cannot give to students. Where it may impact colleges is just if colleges get less funding in general, overall, for all the things that they are doing, they ultimately may have to look at their budgets overall, and they may decide we just have less money to put in the budget to offer to students, for need-based aid or merit. That's just a hypothesis of how that might happen. We don't know if it will, but quite honestly, every year colleges are looking, of course, across all their budgets, and every year they're making this decision: do we increase the amount of institutional aid we give to students, or do we have to decrease it? So will politics or what's happening impact it? Sure, but every year there are lots of things that are impacting the college's decision about how much money they're going to offer students. So as I've been mentioning, there's lots of different names that people use. We can call it a merit scholarship because, if there are truly selective criteria that colleges are using to offer the money, it might, it truly is a scholarship, because in some cases, students are going to have to apply. Other times, some colleges, a merit scholarship may just look like a tuition discount, and there are colleges like this where they're saying, every student who applies, who's not going to get need-based aid, we're going to give you some sort of merit money. And so it kind of does look like a discount. So, but at the end of the day, it's all a decrease in what the tuition is for that family. And that's kind of what we're focusing on and what's important. What's important to also keep in mind, as I keep saying, is that there's this two buckets of money that is given to families based on your financial need, and we're going to talk about how that's determined. And then there's money that the colleges don't look at whether or not your family has financial need, but they're just focusing on your student, and they're giving the money based on certain criteria and how well your student compares to that criteria. What's important about merit scholarships, and what's different than I mentioned private scholarships earlier, is that merit scholarships are renewable. And that's why it's so important to focus on your student getting those scholarships as part of the admissions process, because that's when colleges give out the most money, and it's to incoming freshmen. So if your student is awarded merit scholarship as part of the acceptance to enrolling, then that money, it is renewable year after year. Your student doesn't have to go out and keep finding new sources of that money. So just, giving you an example, if a student receives a $10,000 merit scholarship, they're going to be they're going to receive that in freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. But the only caveat is that some colleges usually have a minimum GPA that's connected to that scholarship. So they just want to make sure that the student is still performing well in school. And what that minimum GPA is will definitely change from college to college. Some colleges kind of make it somewhat easy. It's a 3.0, and you might not have to worry about that, that your student can achieve it. Other colleges, this is kind of where they get tricky, and they might make that minimum GPA requirement 3.5. And so when you get to the point of comparing merit scholarships and deciding which school your student might go to, and if your student's going to go to a college that's offering a merit scholarship, you do want to be very aware of what those GPA requirements are, because the worst situation is that your student decides, you and your student decide on a college they're going to attend. You can afford it because of the merit scholarship, and then for some reason academically they can't meet the minimum requirement and they lose the merit scholarship money, in sophomore, junior, even senior year, and all of a sudden that school has now become much more expensive. So here's a question: if a student receives merit scholarship but decides to take a gap year, how likely is it that they can defer the merit scholarship? That's a very good question. I don't have a straight answer. That's probably going to be very dependent college to college. Some colleges may say, we will allow your student to defer the year, but they might say we might need to reassess whether or not they get the same merit scholarships next year. So there's not a blanket answer. You would need to talk to each college, or the particular college that your student decides that they might want to defer if they're going to take a gap year. Okay. So sorry, somebody's saying that you're seeing my are the three small windows gone? My fault. Actually, let me try one thing to clear that up. Let me share these differently. Sorry. Okay. Don't know if you're still seeing my windows. I'll try and avoid that. Okay. If you apply early decision or early action, is merit aid applied at acceptance, or do private schools assign merit aid at a set time? Another good question. So some colleges, and we're going to talk about examples, they have certain deadlines for merit scholarships. Other colleges are looking at all the applicants as they come through and deciding whether or not they're going to get merit scholarships. So this idea of timing is also a little bit of college by college, and that's why it's going to be important to keep track of deadlines. Let me go through and I'm going to show you some examples. So here's an example, and I actually quickly went by the other slide before. There's basically three categories. These aren't official categories. These are categories that we created as we've been working with merit scholarships over the year. The first category, which I'm showing you an example here, is what we call automatic merit scholarships, and that's colleges that every application that they receive, they are looking at the student and they are deciding whether the student meets their criteria for receiving a merit scholarship, and there's nothing more that the student has to do. Usually these colleges have grids, they have charts, they're much more transparent about the criteria that they're using for determining how to give their merit scholarship money. I just have an example here. It's Miami University in Ohio. And I've been tracking them since 2020. So I have at the bottom right is the grid that they used to show in 2020 before the pandemic, where a lot more schools were test required and you had to actually have a certain SAT, ACT test score and a GPA to receive their scholarship money. And as you can see, going to the left, it's fall 2021, and then up again to the upper right, which is fall 2024. And then in the upper left is the chart for students who are applying, who are going to enroll in fall of 2025. So that's the current seniors who have just been going through the admissions process. So you can see that they've taken away test scores as they've become test optional, but they've also changed their GPA grids, and they increased the upper level GPA, and they've changed the dollar amount. So this goes back to that question, will things that are happening, in the government potentially affect the colleges? Yes, because every year colleges, whether or not something was happening in Washington or not, are re-looking at their plans. They're readjusting their budgets. They're changing these different levels of GPA. So they have the prerogative to constantly tweaking this, and are always looking at it. The thing I wanted to point out, this is a little bit different for Ohio University, is that Miami University in Ohio, is that they've chosen to use a weighted GPA in creating their grid here. They put a footnote, so they tell you, so at least you're aware. Other schools are using unweighted GPA. So it's really important to know what number is being shown on the grid. And if it's unclear, it's perfectly understandable to reach out to college and ask, is this a weighted GPA that I'm looking at, or an unweighted GPA? It's important. And I've had a case with a family where the student and the parent were using the weighted GPA of the student and looking at various colleges and assuming that they were going to receive a certain amount of money because she would automatically fall into a certain scholarship level. And when they got their award level, she was in the scholarship level down from where they thought they were going to be. And it was because the school was using the unweighted GPA, but the family assumed that the school was going to use the weighted GPA. So, you just don't want to fall into that situation. So be as clear as possible in knowing what numbers you're looking at. The next example are the types of scholarships, which are merit scholarships from colleges that are more competitive. And they're competitive because the college is going to ask the student to fill out a separate application, separate from the admissions application. And that separate application could ask for an essay. It could ask for a separate recommendation. And a lot of times these competitive merit scholarships also have different deadlines. And that's what I've highlighted here, particularly for these two colleges. The college on the left is USC, University of Southern California. They actually, whenever their deadlines for merit scholarships, it was always an earlier deadline than what their normal regular decision deadline was. They recently, in the past 2 years, instituted early action deadline. And so they've now said, if you want to be considered for merit scholarships at USC, you need to make sure you're applying in the early action rounds. So their early action round has a deadline of November 1st. You don't have to apply early action. You can apply regular decision, but you're just not going to be considered for any of their merit scholarships. So that's why it's so important to know the deadlines ahead of time. The school on the right is actually BU, the same thing. They have a deadline of December 1st for their merit scholarships. And the other thing I highlighted from BU is, even though they are test optional and they don't, in theory, require test scores for merit scholarships, they are just sharing information about the types of students who do receive merit scholarships at their school and what their profile is. And to give you an idea, they showed what their SAT and ACT profile is. So it just shows you that, these are academically strong students. You don't have to apply with your student's test score, but if you're not applying with the test score, you have to feel confident that the rest of the application shows that this is a strong academic student. Okay, so let me discuss how colleges determine your need, and this is going to be helpful in you and as a family understanding what type of colleges you need to be researching and looking for. So it's important to know your numbers, and there's lots of different sets of numbers. The first is COA, which stands for cost of attendance. This is what, you could call it the sticker price of colleges. This is colleges are required by the government to share the cost of attendance on their sites. It's tuition. It's an estimate for room and board. It's an estimate for any sort of other expenses that they know students might have, for travel, for just general living expenses. And this is the number that colleges use to benchmark whether or not families have any sort of financial need. So in theory, the COA is going to be the most that a college would cost you. The next number is SAI, the Student Aid Index. This is the number that is generated from FAFSA. And FAFSA is the form, or really it's the online form that uses your tax information from 2 years ago. It's called prior tax information, and it uses some assets information, and it gives you this number. And the number doesn't always have a dollar sign next to it. It's just kind of this, 5-digit, hopefully not 6-digit, but a 5-digit number at the that your student will get in an email after they fill out the FAFSA. And they changed the name of this number to Student Aid Index. It used to be expected family contribution, and they found that it was too confusing to people, that people thought that the number that FAFSA generated was the number they were going to pay for college. And that just never ended up being that, because that's not the way the number is used. So they called it now a Student Aid Index, maybe to make it clearer to people. And the word index is to give you an idea that whatever your number is, they're basically trying to compare everybody's capability of paying for college. So if my SAI turns out to be 30,000 and somebody else's 20,000, they're saying my family has more resources to pay for college. So on this index, if we measured all of the families who fill out the FAFSA, I have more resources. I can pay more for college than families that have an SAI below me. And then in addition, I can pay less for college compared to families who have an SAI above me. It is still not going to be the number you end up paying for college. It's just this number that colleges are going to use to determine how financially needy you are. And that's the next calculation here. So they take the cost of attendance, which is the most the college should cost you, and they subtract out your SAI, and then what's left is your need. So that's the gap between what the college costs and what what FAFSA says your resourcefulness is in paying for college, and then this is this amount that you're going to need help to pay for college. A lot of people look at their SAI and they say, I don't even have enough resources to cover what the SAI says I have enough resources for. That's a valid feeling, but based on the calculation that Congress has agreed to, they feel that families with your income and your assets should be able to cover it. But understandably, a lot of families don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what we have to live with and deal with. And the last number, which is really important, which should be talked about more, and I think families gloss over, is just really figuring out what your family's budget is. You can ignore all the other numbers above, and you should figure out truly what you can afford to pay. It unfortunately doesn't mean that we can find you a solution that meets that budget, but it's important to kind of go into the process knowing if I got no other resources from any place, this is how much I could spend, and try to find colleges that might match what your budget is. you may not, again, find enough, but it's important to know kind of what's the maximum you could pay if you got no other help from anybody else. And then you can also decide, and there's no judgment on this, if you're willing to take out loans or not, or if you're willing to add to your family's budget at least what your student can take out in federal student loans. And then you can decide, are we as parents willing to also take out loans? Again, it's an individual decision that you have to look at and decide what your comfort level is in helping your student cover loans, and if you're willing to cover loans to help them find a college that might, be at a different price range. So I mentioned SAI. This is a guide. This is a chart we actually created with a partner of ours called Juno, who you'll learn about later on in the process. They looked at, so the two biggest components that go into the SAI, the two areas that the FAFSA asks a lot of questions about, is your parent income. It's really your household income for both parents, and that it drives 45% or more of what the outcome will be of what your SAI number is. So your household income is important, and the parents' assets are important, the non-retirement assets. This is not set in stone. This is not guaranteed, but this gives you a guideline on, depending on what your household income is and what level of assets you have, what range your SAI will be in. I actually encourage everybody to go. You can Google the government has an estimator. I would honestly Google FSA. It's FAFSA estimator, and it will come up, and you should do it, and it will give you, as it says, an estimation of what your SAI is. And then you can compare it to what this chart tells you. But the reason why I like to show the chart is basically, if your family household income is in that like 250 to 300 range, you are just on the edge, depending on how much asset you have, of maybe getting some need-based aid, depending on certain colleges that you apply to. Obviously, the lower down your family's household income is, then your lower your SAI is, you have more of a chance of getting need-based aid, but it always depends on if you're applying to the right colleges. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more because it's the college's philosophy of how they give out money, which is important to match to what type of money you need, whether your family needs more need-based aid money or more merit scholarship money. So here's
Debbie.
Yes.
Could you go back to that chart and just, maybe I'm the only one who's a little confused. So let's take 150,000.
Yep.
So that would be the parents' assets, and then the percent, the parent income piece. I guess I'm confused. Like, it's asset. I'm confused at what I'm looking at.
Sure. So you want to kind of take the intersection. You want to say, what's the parent's household income?
Okay, let's say it's 100,000, and let's say their assets are 50,000. So yeah, then that would.
So this is estimating that if that family filled out the FAFSA, that their SAI would be about $9,265. Actually,
okay. And that number is how much aid is that?
No, so this is an estimation of what your SAI would be, your student aid index.
Oh, how much need you have.
Yes, yes. And then that number is then used by the colleges to figure out what your true financial need is. So and I'll show you in the next slide, but your need is going to change at each college because the starting point in the calculation, right, is the cost of attendance.
Cost of college.
Right. So if I'm looking at a really expensive college, that's $90,000 and my SAI is $9,000. Well, yeah, my need is really big.
Very high. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And so the negative numbers are just indicating essentially you
They're the
don't,
most needy. They're the
you're
most
the
needy
most needy.
family. So
Okay,
when they redid the calculation for FAFSA, they actually said that the SAI can go down to negative 1,500. Those families, I think, I can't remember what the exact dollar amount is. It might be up to 17. Basically, if you're negative, you're eligible for Pell Grant, and then like the more
right.
negative you are, the more more of the Pell Grant amount you get.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Apologies if other people were getting
No,
this.
that's fine. No, I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
Could I ask a quick other question?
Yes, yes.
If you fall into the category where it says no financial need, does that just automatically mean at that school that they're not going to give you anything to help you?
They're not going to give you need-based aid. And so that's why it's going to be important if you fall into the category, you want to look for the schools that are offering merit scholarships. You can
Got
still
it.
get money from a college, but they're not going to give you money because of a need. They're going to give you money because your students merit.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay? Okay, good questions. I appreciate you even unmuting yourself. I think it's so much easier. Okay, so, oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Sorry. Okay, here we are. So here's where we put it together, kind of based on some of the questions that you've just asking. Let's look at the family on the left. Their SAI is 30,000. As I mentioned before, your need is going to change depending on the schools that you're looking at, because the starting point is the cost of attendance. At the first school, the cost of attendance is 50,000, so that family's need is 20,000. But at the more expensive school, there's more of a gap, and their need is 50,000. If you were that family, you would want to look for schools that have this philosophy that we're going to give families need-based aid. We're going to try and cover what that gap is. We're going to try and cover a certain percentage of that 20,000, or we're going to try and cover a certain percentage of that 50,000. And then this is where you need to dig in. Colleges have different philosophies on how much they're going to cover. And this is a particular data point called percent of need met. And so some colleges say, hey, we're going to cover 100% of whatever your need is. Those are very colleges that have a lot of resources. They tend to be the more elite colleges because they're not trying to attract students based on merit. They've got all of the, demand that they want. And so they said, whatever money we have for our institutional budgets, we're going to give it to families based on need, and we're going to cover basically all of their needs. So those are very, very generous colleges for need-based aid. And there are other colleges that are generous, but maybe they cover 80% of the need. So that's why looking at what that percent of need met is important. Sorry. On the example on the right, here's a family. They have a much, much higher SAI. And if they're looking at a college, their SAI is 90,000. They're looking at a college. The first example is the college costs 40,000. By default, their SAI is so much higher than the 40,000 that the college is going to look at them and say, you have no financial need. So we're going to expect if we're not going to give out merit scholarships, if you apply to us, you're going to pay the full the full cost of attendance, which is 40,000. And then the other example is same and more expensive college, a college that's 80,000. This family has the SAI of 90,000. So again, that college is going to say, you in theory can cover the full cost. We're going to expect you to pay the full amount. So you can see that you can get an idea of which colleges are going to expect you to pay the full amount, and which colleges you're going to have a need at, and then you're going to need to dig deeper and say, okay, the colleges where I have a need, what's the philosophy of those colleges? Are they going to cut? What percentage of the need do they tend to cover? Okay, so somebody's asking good questions here. Are retirement funds included in parent assets? The calculations I'm going over with you are from the FAFSA. The FAFSA does not include retirement assets. There's a subgroup of colleges that ask families to fill out an additional form in addition to the FAFSA, and that form is called the CSS profile. It's about, I don't know, around 300 of those schools. if you're filling out the CSS profile, they are asking for much more information than what the FAFSA asks for. And that form will ask for your retirement assets. It's not clear. Some schools use your retirement assets and make this assumption that you can kind of, that maybe you're more secure because you have money in retirement and maybe they don't need to give you as much for to cover any needs you might have. So colleges use retirement assets if they're asking for it on the CSS profile in different ways. But it's a trade-off because the colleges that ask for the CSS profile, which is again much more intrusive, they're asking for more information, also tend to be more generous in their money. Again, think about colleges as businesses, and so they're giving out their money, so they feel like they have the right to be asking questions or whatever questions they want to be distributing the money that they have. Question about 529 assets. So 529 assets, if the parent is the owner and the student, this particular student who's going to college is the beneficiary, those 529 assets are included in the calculation. If the parent is the owner and their siblings are the beneficiary, then that 529 money is no longer included in the calculation. And another variation is if the 529 is owned by somebody who is not a parent, it could be owned by a grandparent, then none of that money is included in the calculation. Those were all changes that were made about 1.5 years ago. So there's a little bit of a loophole there, depending on if you want to, change who the owners are of the 529s and if your plan allows that. Okay, how easy is it to find and filter schools by their need and their merit? And that's actually, I'm going to show you that in a little bit. I just have to kind of lay the groundwork so that you understand what you're looking for. Okay, here's taking this example further. Remember I said it's important to know what your budget is. So for the family that probably isn't going to get need-based aid, even though the calculation of the FAFSA says that their SAI is 90, they might decide that their budget is going to be 45,000 because the calculation for SAI doesn't know how many other students you have in college. It's not that, or not even in college, it doesn't know how many other siblings there are in your family. It might not ask for other expenses. So it might not know that you are supporting an elderly parent. Maybe you had some extreme medical expenses. So it doesn't know your whole financial situation. You can actually appeal for that later on in the process. But when you're kind of doing the calculation, you might, for lots of reasons, say, it doesn't matter what my SAI is coming out to be. I'm trying to stick to this budget number. In this case, I made it 45,000. So obviously you can be looking at colleges with costs of attendance that are below your budget. And by default, you should be able to afford those colleges. Again, in the first example, if a college had a cost of attendance of 40,000, your budget's 45,000, great. That's a college that you can afford. And then if you move to the column on the right, I gave you an example where the cost of attendance is 80,000. This family has an SAI of 90,000, so they do not have any need, but they're trying to stick to this budget of 45,000. Not that the college really cares or knows about that, but in this case, this might be a college that actually can offer their student merit. And what if they could get $25,000 of merit? That's on top of their $45,000 budget. So now they're at 70,000. And so now they've got, so now they've got a little bit of a gap, and they've got to decide how they're going to fill that gap. Are they going to take out loans? They can add the students' federal loans that they can take out, but they've gotten much closer to the costs of the college, and then considering what their budget is, because they looked for a school that could offer them merit scholarships. And so the reason why I give this example of budget is, and the example I've shared a lot, and I think it's a good one. We worked with a family that the family was somewhat well off if you just looked at their numbers, but there were a lot of expenses behind that number that people wouldn't have known about. They had a child that was disabled and they were going to have to obviously support them for their life. They were supporting an elderly parent. They had other medical expenses. And most importantly, the student who we were working with wanted to go on to medical school, and they knew that right away. And so they were trying to plan for not just the costs of undergrad, they were trying to make sure that whatever money they had saved could also be really used towards medical school. So they purposely said, we want to try and find a school, whether it's with the straight out cost of the school or where my daughter can get the best scholarships that are going to bring us much closer to this budget of $45,000. Because if we can stay within that budget, then they could stretch whatever savings they had to really help their student for medical school. So again, lots of reasons why you might want to set your budget at what a certain number is. It's no judgment. I just think it's a great exercise to do before you go through and start the searching and looking at costs of what colleges are charging these days. So question here, if a student lives with retired grandparents because parents are not living, will FAFSA look at the grandparents' income? If the grandparents are the guardians, then yes, it's the grandparents that will be filling out FAFSA with the student, if they are the legal guardian. Okay, so how is SAI calculated when parents are divorced and one parent has physical custody? I'm going to give a quick answer to this, and it's worth, you can go to our YouTube channel. We do a whole in-depth presentation just on SAI and all these types of questions, because I'm sure a lot more questions will come up as you learn more. So with divorced parents, and this is a new change that happened last year, the FAFSA said the parent that provides the more financial support is the parent that needs to fill out the FAFSA. It doesn't matter who actually has custody or where the student lives. It's the parent that is paying the most to support that student. And it's a little bit, it's a blind trust for the time being that the government has with families. You've got to feel comfortable. Nobody's checking up on each decision. So there is nothing that the college is asking to verify to prove that you're the parent that provides more financial support. So you have to just feel comfortable that you're making the right decision, but you do have to feel comfortable, although not every decision is verified. Sometimes there is a verification process. And if they ever came to you, whether it's the college coming to you and said, can you explain to me, why is this parent the one that filled out the FAFSA? Can you show me why they provide more financial support? You have to feel comfortable that you've got the paperwork to prove that decision. So, so kind of that's the way that works for now. Okay, let me switch quickly. I'm going to show you guys were asking, like, where do you see the numbers? And I'm going to show you our tool, which is called Insights. And this is the reason why we created the tool, because there's lots of data out there. It's not always the simplest to look at, and it's in different places. So the three big sources of data that we use, and other search sites might use as well, is something called the Common Data Set. And I'm actually going to do a different presentation on the Common Data Set because I think it's actually kind of fun and fascinating to look at the numbers, and that gives you even a better understanding of the numbers that we pull into our tool. But basically, the Common Data Set was started, I don't know how many years ago, 15 plus years ago, and it was started by the College Board, U.S. News and World Report, and a company called Peterson, which is a private company. It was really started so that U.S. News and World Report could capture all of this data from colleges that then they use for their rankings. The name is called Common Data Set because if you ever look at a common data set, it is in the same format, regardless of what college it's coming from, and each college is being asked for the same information. I encourage everybody to Google any college that you're interested in. I tend to look at like Tulane. Just Google Tulane and Common Data Set, and it will pull up the page on the college's website where they show the link to the Common Data Set. They usually also have some previous historical years as well, if you want to look at past years. But But so that's great. And I really strongly encourage people to go to an individual college's Google Common Data Set and look at it. There's a ton of information. We do not take all the information. We take what we think is most important for families to be looking at, because you can get overwhelmed, and you don't need to look at every data point that they share. But why we found that our tool is so valuable is that you don't need to go to the college's individual common data set. We have that all in one source. And so you can be doing the filtering and the sorting here, and you can do what I would call as a reverse lookup, because I might not know what Tulane's numbers are, but if I put in my criteria into our tool, then I see the colleges that match the criteria, and then I can dig deeper. So that's what makes our insights valuable. We also pull in some data from IPEDS is the official government source, which it's good, but the data tends to lag a little bit. And the last source of data that we have that we've compiled over the past 7 years are actual offers from families. So families share the offer, the merit or the need-based amount that the college offered them. We then know the academic profile of the student. We know what state they are from, and we also know what SAI range that family had. So it gives you a little bit of a financial and academic picture of that student and family, and then you see how much money the college offered to that type of a student and a family. The information is anonymous, and usually the past 2 years worth of information is helpful. Again, kind of, back to what I said earlier, colleges have the prerogative of changing their criteria. So if you go too far back, it's not as useful, because you don't know, they most likely have changed how they've decided to give out money. Okay, let me jump, and I'm going to pull up Insights, the tool, and show you how we can search. Okay, sorry, I have to just log in. Okay, let me share again. Okay, this takes a little bit longer to load for me because I'm an admin, so it's sharing some other data. But what I skipped is, and if you type in, let me share it to everybody here. If you type in insights.road2college.com, you will get to our tool. You can create a free account. You get 5 free searches, which gives you a little taste of how the tool works. And then you can decide there is a monthly cost. There's a monthly subscription, or we have annual subscriptions. And with the annual subscriptions, we also bundle in monthly webinars that we have with various admissions experts, which I think are really helpful. We've been working with a woman, Terry Cowdrey, who I personally love. She's been in admissions for 40 years. She just has this tremendous breadth of experience. And what I personally love about her is that she also explains things so well and so calmly. But anyhow, so one level of subscription is you can get the annual. You can use this for a year. You get invited to our monthly webinar sessions. If you want to do any one-on-one work with us, which depends, it depends on how much support you need. We give you a discount on it. So there's different ways that you can work with us and access this Insights tool. But if you create a free account, if you get a paid account, you basically can come in here and you can search by colleges individually. You can create lists. you actually get access to a free digital SAT test with a great analysis. But the area that I like is what I call Power Search. And this is where you can start to filter down the colleges that are out there based on some of the criteria that we talked about. I guess maybe you've gotten the sense from my talk today is I tend to start the college search from a financial angle. So let's cast a wide net. Let's understand what your financial situation is, and let's see what colleges that don't make any preconceived notions yet. Let's see what colleges can fit your financial situation, and then start to dig in on some of the other more non-financial criteria, whether that might be location. Major is important, but I find that most colleges have a lot of majors that are going to satisfy a lot of students. So unless your student has a really, really, really particular major, again, I don't use that as that first filter, but it's a filter that we quickly use after the financial look. So let me just show you some ways that you can be filtering. Of course, I mentioned you can filter by college, you can filter by individual states, and you can also filter by regions. These regions are set by the government, but they're pretty, self-explanatory: New England, Rocky Mountains, Southeast. And then down the side on the left, you can filter by cost of attendance. So that's kind of that exercise that I just did before. Let's say I have a budget of $45,000. I want to see all of the private colleges that have a cost of attendance that is in the range of, $20,000 to $40,000 or $20,000 to $50,000. So I could use that criteria. I could use the criteria if I want to see colleges that are offering merit scholarship amounts of 20,000 and above. So I could filter that way. We've also done some calculations, and so we've calculated what the net cost is at some colleges that are offering merit scholarships. So if you want to say, show me the colleges that offer merit scholarships, and after they offer the merit scholarship, the net cost to my student and to my family could be, between 20 and 60,000. That's another way you can search. Here is somebody asked about, can you search by percentage need met? So I might want to search, show me all the colleges that I have a feeling that I'm going to show that I have financial need. So show me all the colleges that are going to cover 80% and more of that financial need. You can use this criteria here. You can search by school size. You can also search, you can layer on top, show me all the schools that have early action, have early decision. Okay. And then the test score is really the way that I kind of start with, also with telling people how to search, because, and though I think I probably didn't emphasize this enough that so far, colleges are using merit scholarships to attract a stronger candidate to their college, right? So they want to have more students who are academically stronger than they might normally come to that college. So they want to look for students that are in what I would call the 75th percentile of the students that normally attend that school, that get the higher test grades, that get the higher GPA, because everybody is to some extent playing the game of to improve in the rankings, we got to improve what the academic profile is of the student who's willing to attend and enroll at our college. So one of the best ways of figuring out if your student is at the top of a school's academic range is by using test scores. It always bothered me that a lot of colleges do not share as much detailed information about GPAs as they do about test scores. And I found out the reason why the other day from Terry Cowdery as we were doing one of our sessions. And it makes a lot of sense, although it's still frustrating. But she said it's really difficult. It's very time consuming for colleges to recalculate all the students' GPAs. And if they were to share GPA information through the common data set, they have to have a standardized way of which that GPA is calculated. So colleges just don't have the manpower, so they just don't share that information because they know that they're not sharing it in a way that is apples to apples when they put that information into the common data set. They know that the test scores are standardized because by the time they get to them, they're already standardized. So that's why there's a lot more in-depth information about test scores from colleges than there is about GPA. The reason why I bring this up is because in the world of test optional, well, maybe your student doesn't want to use their test score. Maybe they're not even going to take a test. I personally recommend that students take a test just so that they have the number. They can always decide not to use it, but better to have it and not to use it than to not have a test score that you might need at some point. But in any case, so if your student doesn't have a test score, then I still suggest that you search by test score. And the way you can do that is you can go to Prep Scholar is a website, and they have a conversion chart that based on all of their years, because they do a lot of test prep work with students, based on all their years, they look at students' GPA, and they have data that says a student that had this type of a GPA tends to get a test score in this range. So I would make that assumption if your student doesn't have a test score. Go make a conversion, use their GPA, and say, well, Sally has a GPA of 3.6. Prep Scholar has seen that most students with a 3.6 tend to get a test score in the range of, 1250 to 1350, and use that to start to narrow the colleges down. Okay, so that's my quick explanation. So let's go to the SAT, and here's where you would pick the range that we're talking about. Let's go with that 1200 to 1300. Okay, and then if I want to find colleges that offer merit, I want that test range to be in the 75th percentile. So that's the filter that I'm going to click by. And then by default, you can see the results automatically happening. So there's 303 colleges that the test range of 1200 to 1300 is in the top 75th percentile. Now I want to sort these colleges because not all of these 303 colleges give merit scholarships, but I want to sort this by the average merit award. And now, and it automatically is sorting it in descending order. And now I can see if my student has that test score range, that these are the more generous colleges that are giving money for merit. I may have no financial need at this college, but I know that if my student applies, that it's likely that they're going to be offered a merit scholarship. So for example, Susquehanna tends to always fall high in this category. They offer, let's just say, $39,000 in merit scholarship. They offer it to 70% of the students who apply who don't have any need. And so if your student applied to Susquehanna, they had a test score between 1200 and 1300. Obviously, they wrote a good application. They have a very high probability of being offered a merit scholarship of 39,000. So that is going to bring that college's cost, down to 30,000 as your net cost. That's the way you need to start looking at the numbers and doing your research to see which colleges, if my student is eligible for merit scholarship there, what's going to be the net cost of that college and how does that fit compared to my budget? Okay, so, and then this is the way you use the tool. I see some of your questions. I'm going to just finish working through the tool and then I'll come to the questions. Here's a quick question. Is the cost of attendance is for 1 year? This is not the 4 years. This is 1 year, unfortunately. So you do this research and you can decide to, add any of these colleges to a list. You can, if you wanted, add 303 of the colleges to the list, or you can go through and, pick, 10, 15 of those colleges. And then you can go, you go to your lists. And then I happen to have a lot of lists because I, just make lots of these lists for other people or sharing it on social media. And let's just go to a list. I'm going to go to a list with colleges that have that have early decision, because I want to show you some other things that you can do with the data. When you come to this view, it's going to be in a table format, similar to like an Excel spreadsheet. And you can add different categories of data. So I'm just going to add all of the data. We have the school profile, we have an admissions data, we have merit, and we have just financial data. Okay, and then you can sort any of these columns Again, in ascending or descending order. But another piece of data that we break out that I think is worthwhile for parents to look at is admission data. So we have here the overall admission rate. We break out what the early decision admission rate is. If the college shares, we have early action rate, and then we by default can show you regular decision rate, and then what percentage of the class is being accepted early decision, which is important to look at if your student is going to apply to early decision, or even if your student's going to apply regular decision to a school that offers early decision, you want to see how many spots are going to be left. So let's just let's sort on this field, or yeah, this column. So I just sorted, and this number is saying for some schools, they are taking a big chunk of their class all early decision. So that's going to leave a lot fewer seats available regular decision. Well, let's just look at a school like Bates. Bates accepts 65% of their class early decision. So, and that's why their early decision rate is 42%. I'm not pressing people to apply early decision, but even if your student doesn't apply early decision, but they're applying to a school that has early decision, it's really important to understand the process and the numbers. So if your student was interested in Bates, it's a selective college. I would definitely say, yeah, you're going to have a much better chance applying early decision. They're accepting 42% of the students' early decision, and they're accepting 65% of the class. It means that there's just much fewer spots, regular decision, and then they also get a lot more applications, regular decision. So you have more students vying for fewer spots. And that's why you can see that the regular decision rate is 10%. And then the blended rate between these two numbers makes the overall admit rate 13%. But if you looked at 13%, you wouldn't know that there's a much better chance of your student applying early decision, because you wouldn't know that the 42% was what the acceptance rate is for early decision. So that's another benefit of the data that we share. We break out all of these numbers so that you're not just looking at a blended number, and then you can sort by these numbers as well. One last thing, and then I'll go to questions. We also show you which schools are asking for that CSS profile and which are not. Here's this percentage of freshmen without need. Oh, here's the column that says the percent of need met. Usually the colleges on this list are going to be more generous. So all of these colleges say that if you apply and whatever your need is, which is going to be cost of attendance minus SAI, they're going to cover 100% of it. That's very generous. These very generous colleges also tend to be very selective. So that's the catch-22. Then the other column here this is the average merit award. So there's two numbers that you want to look at. What's the average merit that the college offers, and what percentage of students that don't have need are actually getting that merit money? So you would look and say, wow, Duke is giving out $77,000 in merit scholarship. They do, but to very, very, very few number of students. So only 3% of the students who don't have financial need are getting this generous award, and it happens to be a competitive scholarship. So, so that's why you have to look at both these numbers. Let's look down here at Albion College. So they're generous. They're giving $43,000 in average merit aid, and they're giving it to 100% of the students who don't have any need. So honestly, going back to earlier in the presentation, I talked about some colleges, or you can look at this merit scholarship as a tuition discount. In this case, to me, this is basically a tuition discount. They're saying, if you don't have financial need, we still want to give you money, and we're going to give some discount to everybody who applies. Okay, that's just the school's philosophy. You scroll a little bit further down, and you can see that this the percentage of students without need receiving merit varies to this concept of 100%, which is a tuition discount, down to like 1% or 50%, University of the Redlands. So my guess is, they're giving out average merit, 33%, but they're only giving it to 50% of the students that don't have need. So they're probably putting some criteria on. They're probably looking at, we want to attract that stronger academic students. So we're going to give out our merit money to the students that have better grades that can kind of lift the whole school and show that they are stronger and maybe increase in the rankings. So hopefully this was helpful. This is a quick overview of a lot of things about merit scholarships, about SAI, about FAFSA, about the data that's out here. But I hope that it's enough to get you started, get you thinking about what your family's college budget should be, start researching and do the estimator of what your family's SAI is. Then you have an idea of, do I need to be looking for colleges that offer merit, or do I need to be looking for colleges that have a high percentage that they're going to cover my need? And then start digging in and start, start with as little or as few preconceived notions and see what you find. I can bet you so many people find colleges that they just weren't aware of, or they didn't know that that college was offering as much money as they were for merit. I mean, I hate to say it, it's a little bit of a game. It's a game of research, and it's a game of understanding the process. And when you know those two things, if you know the way the process works, if you know how to do the research, and if you start early enough and give yourself enough time, I can guarantee you that your end results will be much better off than the person who waits till the summer before senior year to start searching for colleges for their child. Okay, let me look at some of the questions. Does the desired major factor into the search at all, or is the aid consideration always at the college level? This is a really good question. The data that's showed here is aid that is given at the college level. Are there colleges that might give additional aid at the major level? Yes, there could be. There's just not like one source that shares that. So I would obviously start at looking for aid that's given at the college level. And then once you narrow down to a fewer set of colleges, you'd have to reach out and say, is there additional scholarships, or is there additional aid if my student is interested in majoring in these particular majors? Okay, how many have answered? Oh, yeah, you've already answered this. The cost of attendance is for 1 year. Is average merit aid the amount of aid or the cost of attendance after merit aid? We have both of those figures. The column that I'm showing you here, the average merit award, is just the award itself. And then we have a field. Let me see if it's on this table. It may not be on this table. No, it's only on the search, on the other search capability that I showed you, which is the net. Let's see, what's the name of that? Oh, the net cost. That's the number that is the COA after merit. The compare offers tool doesn't seem to be working. So compare offers is only if your student is a senior and if you have an offer to share. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the website called Glass Door, Glass Ceiling, I forget, but the way we run it is for families with high school seniors. It's a completely free site. You basically share your offer, and then you can see the offers of other students at the same college. And so it helps those parents understand whether their offer was a good offer, or maybe there's room that they should go back and appeal. And then all of that crowdsourced offer information is included and shared in Insights if you have a paid subscription. So if you click on shared crowdsourced offers, this is where you would see the compare college offers for each individual college. So I just clicked on Susquehanna. This is actually, and it's real time. So if we look at for the 2025-2026 academic year, these are students that have applied now and they're getting their acceptances and award information right now, and they've started to share their information. You can scroll through and see what the offer is. It is sorted by your SAI range. So these are students with an SAI of under 15,000. They obviously tend to be more needy. I scroll up to the students that have above 60,000 because these students are getting merit. And you can see like the average merit award. It's kind of in a similar range, 44, 41, 45. You know what? If I'm a family and the advice we give, we try and squeeze every dollar out. So for the family that got 41,000, I would be coming here. They're from Maryland. Their student has a 4.0 GPA. They have a 330 SAT. Their academic profile is stronger than the student who got 44,000. 100%, this family should be appealing to Susquehanna. If they can squeeze out and get $3,000 more per year, that's another 12,000 over 4 years. That's definitely worth the time that it would take to send in that appeal. Okay. Will you find out any aid amount when you are accepted at early decision? So you do not find out the FAFSA award is not known until spring. How binding is it? Okay. If you're applying early decision, you will find out your award information. So when you apply early decision, you also have to fill out financial aid forms early. So there are deadlines for early decision financial aid forms, which are extremely early and different than regular decision financial aid forms. So if your student is applying early decision, they will also receive whatever need-based aid offer that the college wants to provide. And if the college is going to offer merit, they would offer it at that time. So the point of getting your information at early decision is that it is all together. And you should hopefully, it should match up to what your estimates are that you could afford that college. That's why you let your student apply early decision. Definitely in the past 2 years, because the FAFSA has been delayed, not every student who applied early decision also got their financial aid information at the same time. Colleges really tried the best that they could, but if they were relying only on the FAFSA, they were hindered in basically, giving the financial aid information. But honestly, going next year, there's no deadlines that, no delays for when FAFSA is going to be available. So it's going to be back to really the normal time frame, which would be October 1st. If your student applies early decision, they should have all of their information at the time that they are accepted. At what point should we start using insights and looking at colleges? That's a great question, Della. There's a different ways. Honestly, if you're a junior, 100%, you should be doing this type of research, whether you're doing it with insights, whether you want to do it, on your own. But juniors, 100%, you need to be full in doing the research. If you're a sophomore, I think a good way of maybe using insights or starting your research is maybe sign up for a month, get familiar with the costs of college, get familiar with what the test score ranges might be for colleges that your student might wants to apply to. Try and see, now you can start to create, if your student wants to go to a certain college and which colleges offer merit, but now you also know what the test score range is that college is going to look for to make your student look like a strong student to that college. So now they have a parameter if they're going to be taking SAT or the ACT of what scores that they should be aiming for. That's the way I would use insights or research if you were in a sophomore year, is to understand what test score range your student should be working towards, understand what the costs of the college are, understand what type of merit scholarship is available. You're just trying to get yourself familiar, and maybe that's why you only need it for a month, and then come back when you're gonna be ready for more serious searching in junior year. We'll be sending a link tomorrow for anybody who came late if you wanted to, watch the whole thing again. In a divorce scenario, who is considered the parent who provides financial support to child? Is the parent paying spousal support, or is it the parent paying for child's needs from the spousal support? It doesn't matter. You just have to decide who is paying more. So even if you get spousal support, maybe you could still have a case to show that your paying more for the student because I don't know, maybe you're covering other expenses that the spousal support doesn't cover, and whatever expenses you're covering come out to be more than spousal support. So there's not a black and white answer to this. It's just however the numbers work out. When is the best time to create a college list for our case? My son is 10th grade and he doesn't yet have a test score. So hopefully what I just said is I think you should start searching, get yourself familiar with the cost of college, but more importantly, if your student doesn't have a test score, they're probably, they haven't even taken a test yet. I would start searching some of these colleges to see what their test score range is, and what their GPA is. And then you'll have a level that your student can figure out whether or not they can achieve when they start prepping for the tests, or if they can improve their GPA to, get to that higher GPA level. Okay, it's 20 after 1. Hopefully we packed in a lot for a Friday lunchtime. I really appreciate everybody who's still on here. And always, it's a really crazy time, obviously what's going on, and I'm not making any political comments, but it's just a fact that things are changing a lot with the government. We 100% don't know, what all those impacts will be to college and to student loans. We, are just trying to stay abreast of it. Things have not been decided. So just sharing that, I could be doing this presentation over the summer and we might have new news and it might change, things that the way I advice I give. But as of right now, I've given you the best advice I can based on the way I know the system works. And I would just, stay involved and informed, because changes that are happening now, even if you're a family with, 10th grader, it can have an impact for you. And I'll just tell you one kind of simple thing that I've been telling people for a long time, but it didn't really sink in, I think, until now. If there are changes to the federal student loans, and if that might mean that you need to take out a loan and it is through a private lender, there are many private lenders. I know a lot of them. I actually respect them. I don't really have this bad view of the private lenders. It's a whole nother conversation, and it's not because I do work with them. I think it's just the way the system evolved. And what's really important is to have a good credit score. And it takes time to build up your credit score. It's going to take a year. So I should add that to my list of know your numbers. In addition to, figuring out your budget, go check your credit score. If you're in the high 600s, low 700s, start working on it. I mean, if you need to borrow, a credit score, obviously, 750 and above is really where you want to be. So, and that's going to take a year to work on. So add that to the list for the families who are in 10th grade. Go check your credit score and start seeing if there are ways that you can improve it. Okay. Anything else? Any other quick questions? Oh, yes. Plan ahead bundle. Wow, Todd, I'm so glad you saw that. We put that out. That's kind of new. And in the past, few months. And it is for families in 10th grade. Of course, you can use it in 11th grade. It's to try and do the work that we're talking about today with you. So the plan ahead bundle is to help you figure out what your financial situation is. It's to help you build your budget. It's to help you understand where your student is academically and what types of things that they can make improvements with. How much time do they still have to make improvements, and where should they focus their energy to get the best bang out of their effort, in the goals that they want to achieve. So that's the purpose of the plan ahead. You would work with, in that bundle, we have a college financial planner, so would help you on the financial side, and we have a great academic college counselor who would help your student understand where they are academically and guide you to make improvements. So thank you for checking that one out. We're trying to get people more aware of that. The biggest challenge that we've always had is to get people to start working early enough into understanding the process and improving their student situation and their own financial situation. Okay, so Florin, you asked do you have lessons on getting loans? Yes, we do. We have YouTube videos on our channel from previous years you can start looking at. We start talking about loans like in the March, April timeframe and through the summer. So you can definitely sit in on those presentations to better learn about that process, which is also important. So this presentation will be emailed tomorrow. It maybe tonight. It depends how quickly we download it, but definitely tomorrow. And so you'll definitely get a copy. So Florin, you've typed something here. It's honestly really small for me to read, but I think it says the bank statement must be equal to the cost of attendance in order to be eligible to apply to that college, even though the money has been collected in the last 5 years. Will financial aid be granted in this situation? If you want to email me, I'm not quite sure exactly what you're talking about, or if you're taking a screenshot from something, you can send me an email here. Let me, I'm just going to ask you to send it to the support because it's easier to keep track of. Support at Road2College. Oops. And Florin, if you want to send me that information there, I can more easily take a look at it. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Take care.